everyone, welcome back to Pleasure Principles, your go-to channel for breaking down myths, embracing empowerment, and fostering open conversations about intimacy, connection, and sexual health. Today, we're tackling a question that often sparks debate. Is pleasure exclusive to certain people, or is it something we all deserve to explore and celebrate? We've all heard it. The whispers that pleasure belongs to some, not all. That some genders are more entitled to it, more deserving of it. This is a harmful myth, one we need to dismantle. Pleasure is not a prize reserved for a select few. It's a fundamental human experience, available to everyone regardless of gender. The idea that pleasure is exclusive often stems from societal norms and expectations. These norms can be incredibly powerful, shaping our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. But they can also be limiting, preventing us from embracing the fullness of our human experience, including the joy of pleasure. It's time to challenge these limiting beliefs. We need to rewrite the narrative around pleasure, moving away from exclusion and towards a celebration of our shared capacity for joy and satisfaction. This starts by acknowledging that pleasure is a universal language, spoken by everybody, regardless of gender. Traditional gender roles have long dictated who is allowed to experience and express pleasure. Women are often taught to be demure, their pleasure secondary to that of their partners. Men, on the other hand, are pressured to be dominant and in control, their pleasure often tied to performance and conquest. These restrictive roles can be incredibly damaging. For women, it can lead to a disconnect from their bodies and a silencing of their desires. Men, burdened by the expectation of constant virility, may find themselves anxious about performance and unable to fully relax into intimacy. And what about those who don't fit neatly into the boxes of male and female? Non-binary individuals often face erasure and invalidation, their experiences dismissed or misunderstood. This rigid adherence to outdated norms not only limits individual experiences of pleasure, but also creates a climate of shame and secrecy around sexuality. The good news is that science paints a very different picture. Research shows that pleasure is a biological response, experienced similarly across genders. The same areas of the brain light up when we experience pleasure, whether we identify as male, female, or non-binary. Our bodies are wired for pleasure. We have nerve endings designed specifically to detect and transmit pleasurable sensations. These sensations trigger the release of feel-good chemicals like dopamine and endorphins, creating a sense of well-being and joy. This biological reality undermines the notion that pleasure is exclusive to certain genders. The capacity for pleasure is hardwired into our very being. It's not about who is allowed to experience it, but rather about creating the conditions that allow everyone to access and enjoy this fundamental aspect of being human. It's crucial to recognize that the conversation about pleasure extends far beyond the binary of male and female. Non-binary individuals, often marginalized and misunderstood, experience pleasure in rich and diverse ways. Their experiences challenge us to expand our understanding of what pleasure can look like, feel like, and mean. It reminds us that pleasure is not a one-size-fits-all experience. It's a vast and varied landscape, shaped by individual preferences, experiences, and identities. We must create spaces where these diverse experiences are not just tolerated, but celebrated. This requires listening to and amplifying the voices of non-binary individuals, ensuring their experiences are represented in our conversations about sex, sexuality, and pleasure. The Male Experience: Unpacking Societal Expectations. While traditional gender roles often position men as the gatekeepers of pleasure, the reality is far more complex. Men, too, are impacted by these limiting expectations, often in ways that are less visible but equally harmful. The pressure to be in control, to perform, and to compartmentalize emotions can create a disconnect between men and their bodies. It can lead to anxiety around sex, difficulty communicating desires, and an inability to fully relax into intimacy. We need to create space for men to explore the full spectrum of their emotional lives, including vulnerability and the freedom to express a wide range of emotions. This involves challenging the notion that masculinity is synonymous with stoicism and control, encouraging men to embrace their emotional intelligence and cultivate deeper, more fulfilling connections. Breaking down barriers: steps towards inclusivity. Creating a world where everyone feels empowered to experience and express pleasure requires a multi-pronged approach. We need to dismantle harmful norms, challenge limiting beliefs, and cultivate a culture of respect, understanding, and open communication. This is not a quick fix, but an ongoing process that requires commitment and action from all of us. It's about creating a world where pleasure is not a source of shame or secrecy, but a celebrated aspect of our shared humanity. The journey towards inclusivity starts with education, continues with open dialogue, and thrives in an environment of mutual respect and understanding. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves to experience pleasure, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. Education: the key to understanding and acceptance. Education plays a crucial role in dismantling the myths surrounding pleasure and fostering a more inclusive understanding of sexuality. Comprehensive sex education, free from shame and bias, is essential. We need to teach young people about consent, respect, and healthy relationships. We need to provide accurate information about bodies, pleasure, and sexual diversity. This knowledge empowers individuals to make informed choices about their bodies and relationships, fostering a culture of respect and understanding. Education shouldn't stop in the classroom. We need to normalize conversations about sex and pleasure in our homes, communities, and media. This includes challenging harmful stereotypes and promoting diverse representations of sexuality. Communication: bridging the gap between expectation and experience. Open and honest communication is paramount when it comes to pleasure. We need to create safe spaces where individuals feel comfortable expressing their needs and desires without fear of judgment or shame. This requires active listening, empathy, and a willingness to be vulnerable with our partners. It's about moving away from assumptions and expectations, and instead fostering an environment of curiosity and exploration. When we communicate openly about our desires and boundaries, we create the foundation for more fulfilling and pleasurable experiences. We bridge the gap between expectation and reality, fostering deeper intimacy and connection. Reclaiming pleasure: a universal birthright. Pleasure is not a privilege, it's a birthright. It's time to reclaim pleasure from the clutches of outdated norms and limiting beliefs. It's time to celebrate our shared capacity for joy, connection, and intimacy. This requires a collective effort. We need to challenge the status quo, dismantle harmful stereotypes, and create a world where everyone feels empowered to explore and express their pleasure freely and without shame. Let's embrace a future where pleasure is not a source of division, but a unifying force, reminding us of our shared humanity and our capacity for joy. Let's create a world where everyone feels safe to explore, experience, and celebrate the full spectrum of their pleasure. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, pleasure is your principle too.